Nigeria has proven Nnamdi Kanu right at every point. We sat here today. I'm speaking Dogon Turenchi. I have no single argument against, not one single argument against the facts that have been adduced by Nnamdi Kanu in his agitation against the Nigerian state. Not one. And if you press a little further, I am today convinced that Nnamdi Kanu was 110% correct in his assessment of the Nigerian state, what ails it. He was correct. But today, he sat in a cell somewhere, and numerous murderers are walking around free. That is vindication. The man is correct. Nigeria encourages madness. If it will not listen to rational voices, it became inevitable that more extreme voices will be spoken in the language that Nigeria understands. And of course, you've seen the rise of the Umezuruke of this world and the multiple persons who had traded on the grievances of Igbo to build separatist movements demanding separation from Nigeria. I've had multiple occasions to address separatist agitators, both in Igbo land, in Yoruba land, and elsewhere. There are reasons why separatist noises have not found ventilation or action in Nigeria. And this is because outside of the state and the multiple evils that the state has mollycoddled, the only other persons who have sought to keep dialogues and violence have been counter-revolutionary groups such as Boko Haram and the rest. Now, if you who have genuine grievances now believe that you can use violence to achieve the goal, what you do is that you play into the hand of the system, which then delegitimizes your genuine grievances on account of the medium of expression. Let me be clear. Everything the oppressed does in pursuit of freedom will find no condemnation from me, including violence. But I may not support it because I do not believe that it would achieve the goal. That is not me condemning it. So what you have found in this time is that in Igbo land, you've had persons trading off the grievance of the people to gain offices, to gain political patronage, to make money. And then you've also had persons who have genuine grievances, are not interested in trading off it, demand changes, but embraced the wrong methodologies in my own view. I may not be correct. Of course, you had the lies. No victor, no vanquished. Or is this true? The truth is that this is anything but. Igbos will point to the 20-pound policy and say that, oh, when we came out of the Civil War, regardless of what I had, all we had, all we got were 20 pounds. Awolowo was largely blamed for this. He was the economic minister. They will speak to the kwashokorization of Igbo children and talk about how all is fair in war, quote and unquote, and point to the weaponization of hunger. There are multiple responses to these things, but it's not my place to offer them this morning. But the only thing I want all of us to do is to keep in mind, is all indeed fair in war? The explanation that had been offered multiple times are this. Bank records had been destroyed, banks had been looted, but if you could prove that you had this money and the bank was not in in the war zones, you could have access to your money. So the Igbo upper class were largely unaffected because they were largely dwelling in Lagos and the like. Ekweme got his money. No victor, no vanquished. But you began to have abandoned property syndrome. In Port Harcourt, Igbo properties were expropriated. Persons who had had long held grievances against the domination of the Igbos acted vengefully, appropriated Igbo properties. In most parts of Nigeria, outside of the South, this didn't happen. I'm not suggesting that it didn't happen in some places that Igbo properties were expropriated, but I am not sure I've heard of it outside of the South. But these things happened, and it continued to birth a lot of resentment within Nigeria. So it's a lie to say that there was no victor, no vanquished. Igbos were certainly vanquished, and they were not allowed to forget about it. For years, Igbos were not deemed fit to serve in the upper echelon of either the police or the army or any of the armed forces for that matter. For years, structurally marginalized to the point where it is only the eastern region or the land of the Igbos that is left with only 5 states. Others have become 6, 7. The number of local governments have not been increased, and yet these local governments have become the center for sharing revenue. Land space was not a factor in revenue allocation prior to the restructuring of Nigeria since after the Civil War. Today, it is the basis for revenue allocation, and you can be sure that the region with the least number of local governments is the Southeast. The land of Igbos have the least number of local governments, so systematically and structurally they are marginalized even in revenue allocation. You have a situation today where, whether we want to accept it or not, Igbos are deliberately excluded even from the presidency. In the years of Abacha or post-Abacha, Nigerians evolved a novel power sharing arrangement. They call it zoning. Power has been zoned to the south and to the west and to the north. The north has taken power and it's gone round. In 2023, it came back to the south, and by any rational deduction, should have gone to the Igbo. Nnamdi presented a very, very good candidate. We know the story of what happened in that election. It is almost impossible to argue against the fact of Igbo exclusion when you listen to the rhetoric issuing forth from certain persons in the northern part of Nigeria and from Yoruba land. The reality is that the marginalization of Igbo is structured not necessarily because the Igbos have been excluded from power per se, but because Nigeria continues to suffer from a problem that I will speak to when I'm coming to the conclusion of this lecture. Nigeria has an Igbo problem. Keep that in mind. We'll get there. But Nigeria has excluded Igbo. You also find that the land of the Igbos have become militarized. I have traveled extensively in Igbo land. As a young lawyer, I used to be the one that will handle the cases for my law offices in the eastern part of Nigeria. It used to be that the youngest lawyer in a law office would do the grunt work. So I used to be the one that would go to the east to handle cases for my office. And I traveled there. But more importantly, in recent times, I've had occasion to visit the east. I was a guest of the NBA Oka this year to deliver a lecture at their law week. And I traveled to Enugu from Oka. And one of the things I saw very quickly was the acute militarization of the space. Multiple military checkpoints everywhere, and a culture of the people learning to fear the security operatives, from the drivers to the people who are casually walking by, having to raise their hands even as they walk by. The systematic dehumanization and the citizens, I don't even know what to call it. When you remove, we'll get there. The important thing is that the Igbo person in his homeland is not treated with dignity, with respect, or with the protection due to a citizen under the law. But one of the things that has been battered by all of this is the resilience of Ndi Igbo. I was speaking with a friend sometime after the last election, the 2023 election, and he said to me, if one I like, shut us out of government. When you thief all the money finish, you bring it to the market and we'll be waiting for you. You want to buy food, Ndi Igbo is waiting. You want to buy building material, Ndi Igbo is waiting in the market for you. You want to buy anything you are buying in Nigeria, from electronics to building material to cars, anything, food, Ndi Igbo is waiting for you. This was the message he passed to me. And this is a message against which you can have no argument. Excluded from opportunities within the governance system, Ndi Igbo has built viable alternatives, created wealth, immense wealth, amongst his young men and women. The spirit of exclusion has battered the spirit of independence. And that resilience has assured that Nigeria has built a people whom we may not like hearing as being destined for leadership, Padadi, Onyama, and Azikwe, but whom history would suggest offers lessons to those who will learn. Because what I see when I look at the resilience of Ndi Igbo is the same resilience I see that we call the Nigerian spirit, the refusal to give up. But in the midst of all of these, we must also speak to what now grew in Igbo land. And that's the rise of grievance politics. Instead of engaging Nigeria and its many issues with some measure of optimism and vision, what has happened is that there has been a rise in grievance politics in the land of the Igbos. You find persons who have traded on the genuine grievances of the people to gain offices, national offices, gubernatorial offices, but who have gone on to even be worse and more ruinous for the interest of the Igbos than the enemies of the Igbos who are outside of Igbo land. No Fulani man has ruled in Igbo land in the last 27 years. No Yoruba man has ruled Igbo land in that time. You've not had any Bachama ruling in Igbo land. No Hausa man has ruled Igbo land. Every ruler of Ala Igbo has been sons and daughters of Ala Igbo. Or outside of the exceptions, such as Peter Obi and today Uche, who are the persons that you may speak with has been exceptional in the governance of Ndi Igbo. You've had Oji Uzo Kalu, you've had Rocha Okorocha, you've had numerous Igbo sons and daughters who have spoken in the name of Ndi Igbo and only feathered their own nest whilst playing up the grievances which they never bothered to address. They speak to the marginalization of Ndi Igbo, and these marginalizations are real, but they speak of them only in terms of demanding that they too be settled, never in the interest of the whole. And in the midst of all of this, you find the rise of the separatist voices. And let me explain something. Nigeria encourages madness. If it will not listen to rational voices, it became inevitable that more extreme voices will be spoken in the language that Nigeria understands. And of course, you've seen the rise of the Umezuruke of this world and the multiple persons who had traded on the grievances of Ndi Igbo to build separatist movements demanding separation from Nigeria. I've had multiple occasions to address separatist agitators, both in Ndi Igbo land, in Yoruba land, and elsewhere. There are reasons why separatist noises have not found ventilation or action in Nigeria. And this is because outside of the state and the multiple evils that the state has mollycoddled, the only other persons who have sought to keep dialogues in violence have been counter-revolutionary groups such as Boko Haram and the rest. Now, if you who have genuine grievances now believe that you can use violence to achieve the goal, what you do is that you play into the hand of the system, which then delegitimizes your genuine grievances on account of the medium of expression. Let me be clear. Everything the oppressed does in pursuit of freedom will find no condemnation from me, including violence. But I may not support it because I do not believe that it would achieve the goal. That is not me condemning it. So what you have found in this time is that in Igbo land, you've had persons trading off the grievance of the people to gain offices, to gain political patronage, to make money. And then you've also had persons who have genuine grievances, are not interested in trading off it, demand changes, but embraced the wrong methodologies in my own view. I may not be correct. And speaking of correct or not correct, Nigeria has proven Nnamdi Kanu right at every point. We start here today. I'm speaking Dogon Turenchi. I have no single argument against, not one single argument against the facts that have been adduced by Nnamdi Kanu in his agitation against the Nigerian state. Not one. And if you press a little further, I am today convinced that Nnamdi Kanu was 110% correct in his assessment of the Nigerian state, what ails it. He was correct. But today, he sat in a cell somewhere, and numerous murderers are walking around free. That is vindication. The man is correct. Nigeria has an Igbo problem, and it is important that we address this. How did the Igbos move from being persons desirous of a unitary system at the peak of his hegemony to demanding separate homeland today? It's simple. The loss of citizenship, the absence of the rule of law. If impunity does not govern the country, there will be citizens. If the Igbo are citizens in Nigeria, they will not desire a separate homeland. If the Igbos are citizens of Nigeria, I would also be a citizen of Nigeria. The Igbo problem in Nigeria is the absence of citizenship. Restore citizenship to the Nigerian, the Igbo will not be demanding to go anywhere. Restore citizenship to Nigeria, the people of the Middle Belt will not be crying about Fulani herdsmen. Restore citizenship to Nigeria, the Hausa nation will not have Maishango locked up in prison simply because he asserted Hausa nationality. My request that we stroll around Nigeria, in some cases tiptoe around Nigeria, is not to peel our scabs, is to go to the historical roots of our problems, to see that the problems that have historical roots can only be cured by telling ourselves the hard truth. And if we shall confront this truth, we will find salvation for ourselves. Nigeria has an Igbo problem, but that problem is simply the loss of citizenship. If the Igbo people will be allowed citizenship in Nigeria, separatist agitations would disappear. We are all, as a collective, to blame for where we are. There are no saints and there are no sinners. The hegemons of the 50s and early 60s are today's victims because they are lacking in the protection of the law. Yesterday's hegemon is today's victim. Today's hegemon will become tomorrow's victims if citizenship is not quickly restored and the law allowed to rule in Nigeria. As I have said, I will offend, but it's not because I do not love you all. It is simply because the truth has to be told if we must heal. Nigeria's problem can be easily cured with citizenship and the rule of law. Osun election showed you that. And Osun election should also show you that the problem is about class. It has very little to do with ethnicity. Father Nonsi wasn't talking to Iyachukudi. He was speaking to fellow Yorubas, fellow Ijeshas. Those were the persons to whom Father Nonsi was talking. If he had mentioned Chukuma or Izuchuku or Osita or Chinyeri, you would have talked about ethnic bigotry in pursuit of power. There was no ethnicity other than the Yoruba involved in Osun State. This is the lesson of Nigeria. The Igbo problem is the absence of citizenship. Next week, I'll be coming home to Yoruba land. I may even decide to deliver that lecture in Yoruba so that I'll piss off a few more people. But then, have you a blessed week. Congratulations to the governor of Osun State. I can't say congratulations to the people of Osun State just yet. When he has done well, we will congratulate the people. But the voice of the people counted for something this time around. And that should tell the Nigerian oppositions, organize, mobilize the people. Evil blinks when the people are determined for change. Have you a blessed week, everyone. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.